Welcome, everyone. A legend in leadership in life and sports is our special guest today. It is an honor to introduce Ann Meyers Drysdale. Thank you for joining us, Ann.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm excited to be here.
Now, if I listed your many accomplishments, we would be here for days. What are your first, 5 favorite professional successes?
I love when you say professional, because usually people ask me and I say my children. That's always my first. There's so many. Honestly, I've been blessed in so many ways to have opportunities. Certainly being at UCLA and getting a scholarship there, the first woman to get a full athletic scholarship at UCLA, and then winning a national title in '78. Being on the 1976 Olympic team, the first time they had women's basketball in the Olympics, and winning silver. And then my tryout with the Pacers, getting invited to try out in the NBA, which my brother David was already playing in the NBA, and going through that process and being the number 1 draft pick in the WBL, in the Women's Professional Basketball League, which was the first pro league in this country. And then after that, going to the Superstars and winning that 3 years in a row, and being invited to the Men's Superstars. But the biggest thing coming out of that was meeting my future husband, Don Drysdale.
That's pretty amazing. And then also you've been pretty successful as vice president, and you've kind of went in a man's world there too. Can you just share a little bit about that?
Well, and I left those out, obviously being a part of 3 WNBA titles with the Phoenix Mercury, and the first 2 as general manager, and then moved over to broadcaster. And I was broadcasting for ESPN at the time, and also doing some Pac-12 games. I've been broadcasting almost 45 years now, and the Phoenix Suns, their owner, came to me and asked me if I would like to be the general manager of the Mercury. And I thought, why not? I loved the broadcasting. Things were kind of changing a little bit, and I love still being a part of the game, but I thought, what a great opportunity. And I took it. My kids were a little bit older. My oldest son was going to school at ASU, living in Southern California. My other 2 children, my son Darren and my daughter Drew, were just in high school. And I thought it was an easy commute, kind of back and forth. And so I took the job, and a lot of people were like, well, you've never been a general manager. How can you do this? You're not, you don't know anything. I felt very confident in my ability to select talent and to work with people, to communicate. And fortunately, we those first 2 years, we won a WNBA title while I was there.
Well, Amazing. You're certainly used to teams. And ours is ready for you. We have a combined over 75 years knowing each other. Everyone has their own talents, and we are excited to give audiences a glimpse into your expertise, light, and adventures in life. And Adriana is going to be up after Corey.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ann, for joining us. We really appreciate it. So thank you for taking the time to spend with us. It's good to see you too. At the recent 72nd NBA All-Star Game, Candace Parker became the first woman to be a commentator for the NBA All-Star Game, alongside Brian Anderson and Reggie Miller. Before the game, Candace Parker credits the women who have come before her and who have laid the groundwork for her. You, Ann Meyers, are one of those people she's referring to. How does it make you feel that you helped shine a light for women, in the broadcast world, to be given the opportunity she was given at the NBA All-Star Game?
Now, things have changed so much, Corey, and I'm so happy and proud for Candace Parker and Chiney Ogwumike and Renee Montgomery and so many other women that are now in this business of broadcasting, that the fact that they have that opportunity, and African-American women, you're seeing more and more of their faces in broadcasting. So, I started in 1979. I started broadcasting men's UCLA basketball, and ESPN had not existed when I started broadcasting. It came into existence, I 79, 78, I guess, but it was still fairly new, and nobody really knew where ESPN was going to take sports. And it's changed the whole world, that's for sure. ESPN has. And I've been fortunate enough to not only work for ESPN, but all the networks, and do 6 Olympics, and have done Final Fours both for the men and the women in college basketball, in softball and volleyball, and have broadcasted so many other different venues. But you look back in the 70s and 80s, you really didn't know, you didn't have that, certainly didn't have social media, but you didn't know who was on the East Coast, who was in the South, the Midwest, the West, the Northwest. People really didn't have that opportunity to really know who anybody was, let alone broadcasting as far as sports was concerned too. So, to be able to be one of the first And I think I was the first in the NBA to broadcast the Indiana Pacer games. And I was the first to broadcast an NBC game with the NBA. And with Dick Ebersol was in charge, but Dick Enberg is who I worked with. And so being a part of that I feel very grateful. And there's women before me too that I know has opened doors. And just so proud of the opportunities that these young women have now, that they're getting the chance to be able to voice their opinion.
Thank you so much, because people like you. So thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hi, Ann. This is Adriana. Thank you so much for being with us. And it's nice to meet you over at least this way, maybe one day in person.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Oh my goodness, that would be an honor. On more serious note, I have a question for you. Your husband, Don Drysdale, was very young when he passed. And this must have been very difficult for you and your family. You must have missed him very much. What advice would you give to those in similar circumstances and how to keep moving forward?
Well, and Andrea knows about this with Little Star Foundation. I mean, we all have adversity in our life, and, these children face, illnesses and cancer that, can destroy so much of their body and so forth. But, sports has been wonderful for us because it's taught us not to give up. And we face adversity in a loss, in an injury, but you have that opportunity to come back and work hard. You have that choice. And so coming from a large family, I have 5 brothers and 5 sisters. And my mom and dad really taught us a good work ethic. And when you come from a big family, you have to learn to work together as a team, and which isn't always easy, but it's helped us through our sports. And I think, too, that with the adversity and losing loved ones, which I've lost several siblings, and my mom just passed away in September, there's a grieving process. And Don was about 19 years older than I was. We had 3 small children at 5 months, 3 months, and 3 years, 5 years old, 3 years old, and 5 months. And so his family, his mom and dad were still alive, and he's got a daughter from his first marriage and his sister and her family. And my family being so large, everybody really stepped in. I don't know if I'm ever going to stop grieving and missing him. And it'll be 30 years this July. But I know that without family and without friends and the people within the sports world and the basketball world have really been tremendously supportive in helping me raise my children and helping me to get up every day and say it's a positive day. And, and I have that choice. I can choose to stay in bed and not do anything, which it's very difficult for a lot of people to do, to get out of bed. What is life worth living for if the love of my life is gone, or if I've got a sickness and nothing's going to happen. And, but I've just been taught to fight. Been taught to not give in. And certainly there's going to be failure. There's going to be losses. But I know that, you've got to be able to turn your day around. And yesterday's done with. You can't change yesterday. Tomorrow, you don't know what's going to happen. It's today. Today, you make that difference on who you're going to be and the difference you make in somebody else's life.
Oh, wow. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I come across
That's a good question. Sometimes I fall apart on those kind of questions about Don.
I was keeping it together as you were talking. Thank you for sharing, because this is a question that I come across even personally quite often. And
why is that?
Question.
Why is it? So why is the question asked to you?
In the field that we work with children that have, sometimes terminal illnesses, and they do pass. And I had some passing in the family as well, and early on, and it was very difficult for me. I didn't know. I was there where it was hard for me to get up from the bed.
So how have you worked through things?
I'm a former athlete, so I was raised not to give up as well, and always fight and not to give up, keep going. And there is a challenge. Sometimes you can control sometimes you can control these circumstances, but you can control your attitude and what you are doing and your actions. And that's how I thought of it.
Yeah. And it's okay to cry. I mean, we all need to grieve. We all, whether it's in private or with friends and family. And sometimes it hits you at different times. And the lives that you're changing, the fact that you're there, just the fact that you're there, you don't have to say anything, but people know that you're there. And, what's the saying? Kids don't care how much you know. They just want to know that you care.
Correct. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Before we go into with Karen and Rebecca, I want each of you to answer the question that Ann had, like, how do you go through, how have you been able to deal with the grieving process? Corey and Karen and Rebecca, as kids with cancer, you all had friends that passed away at a very young age. You had to deal with losing friends, losing people in the hospital, not knowing if you're going to make it to your next birthday. Corey, you lost your leg to cancer. So if we could take this time, are you okay? And to have everybody answer that question that you just asked about?
In fact, Corey, I read your story too.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I definitely have my days where it's definitely tough to get up, and I've gone through those moments, and I've reached out to Andrea sometimes on random Saturdays or Sundays to get some inspiration from her. But I fight for my family now, now that I'm married, I have 2 kids, and, I have an amazing wife, and, my parents are still here, and, so I fight for them. And, but it is hard, and I do have a strong faith as well. So I do rely on God to help me out in those tough times. But, I have those days where it's hard to get out of bed, and it's hard to move on and think, how can things possibly get any worse? Cause they're already so bad as it is, but, or better, I'm sorry. But, so I have my days, but I have my support systems that are there to help me. So.
Yeah. Do any of you know who Coach John Wooden is?
Oh yeah.
Corey does. Rebecca, Karen, Adriana.
Your brother played with them, yeah. Played for him.
Google.
They know a little bit about him. They know a little bit.
But he had a saying, live each day as your masterpiece.
Oh, okay. Beautiful.
Because we don't know when our time is up. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we are here, and like you said, Corey, I'm sure you have had unbelievably awful days. How am I going to get through this and so forth? But you know what? Your faith carries you through, and your children, your family carry you through.
Yes.
So with Rebecca and Karen, and speaking of John Wooden, the legendary John Wooden, I won the John Wooden Citizenship Award, one of his awards, and he's a coach who lives on. It's one of those things, and it reminds me, you're still here, of course, but that you remind me so much of him in a sense, but going through the athlete professional world is a lot of male dominance. I mean, we didn't get our sports till much later, and you were one of the pioneers, Billie Jean King, of course, a pioneer, but it's a tough journey to do that. And so when you look through for leadership, and that's why we're so excited to talk with you, you have a leadership in life in sports, and sometimes people have one or the other, and it's hard to have the combination, especially in professional sports. And you have such a grace about you still, but
I have to liken it to the industry that I'm in, with running assisted living facilities. And we certainly there's definitely, you have to deal with death in that field. And although we just, we get close to the people that we care for, and when they pass away, you have to realize that there's still X amount of people that are there that need you. And so it's kind of like, it's been an honor to take care of individuals, and a lot of times they're ready to go. So it's like, we're at peace with them and for them. But it's really kind of goes back to what you guys have said, each one a little bit, but that we're still here. And that means that I'm not done. We're not done. There's a purpose. There's things that need to be done. And we are still here because we are supposed to be working on those and achieving those and fulfilling our dreams. So that's what helps me a lot. And then most definitely my faith is my stronghold.
And Rebecca, it's such a special gift because my mom was in an assisted living, and you see these, men and women that have lived such an incredible life and families coming in to support them and so forth. But you are there 24/7. And the fact that when you lose somebody that you've cared for how many months or how many years too, every day, And then to know that you still have to have the emotion to pick up for the people that are still there is very difficult. And it's a gift that God has given you to be able to do that.
And she's representing like all the caregivers out there in the audience. We love you. We know, what you do a little bit, but the rewards you get are not, there's so much more that we wish you could receive. So even listening to Rebecca, you can tell a little bit of her choking up thinking of that, because it's not something that you even get a chance to talk about. It's like you're always doing, a caregiver is always doing. And so, this is so exciting. Okay. So
you're up, Karen.
Well, I just went through a recent loss. My younger brother passed away last year. And it's been really hard. I'm still going through it, to be honest. I'm not fully healed or fully myself yet. But I try to live by what he taught me, or what he left in me. And that's what I pretty much do, but I still miss him a lot.
How old was he?
He was 24.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry. It's never easy. I lost a sister when she was 21 in a car accident, and none of us were prepared. And we still grieve. We still grieve today. And, but it's good to have those tears. It's good to, be able to share them, and don't hide whatever, people think, well, can't you get over it? No. But my heart goes out to you, and I'm saying lots of prayers for you and your family.
Thank you.
and she shows up every time for these interviews to support, to give what we're all trying to do, give a little light to someone else who, whether they're in the car, whether they're at home, whether they're with people, not with people, whatever it is, maybe they can feel like they're part of a community, and we hope, they are. But so anyway, this has gone a different route, and a very special route. And I think one of the things that I'm so impressed with how you've handled, and is the grace in which you care about others, which you're just showing right now. So I know this was a different question. I think Karen and Rebecca have their own questions separately. So why don't we, you want to try? Karen, are you ready to go with your question?
Yes,
Maybe.
I'm ready.
Okay.
So, and you grew up playing basketball. What qualities do you find in the players you commentate on and help manage that you admire that you also had as a player?
Well, I grew up playing a lot of different sports, and it wasn't just basketball. My dad played basketball at Marquette, so we were around basketball all the time. My older sister, she was 8 years older than I was, Patty, played softball, volleyball, basketball. And that 8-year difference was big, because by the time I'm 8, she's 16 driving. By the time I'm 10, she's already out of the house. And my older brothers, as a family, we always supported each other. We always went to our brothers and sisters' games. And I thought that was so much fun to see the intensity that they played their games with, and that our mom and dad supported us playing sports. So when I was younger, I read a book on Babe Didrikson Zaharias. And she was in the 1932 Olympics as a track athlete. And she also played other sports, but it gave me a dream to be an Olympian, because it just seemed like that was the only way that you could really kind of broaden your sports mind was being in the Olympics. We didn't know about tennis. We didn't know about Althea Gibson then. The first Olympics, I think, broadcasters was 1960 with Wilma Rudolph, excuse me, who I loved and admired so much. And then Wyoming Attias in the 64 and 68 games. And so I grew up in the 60s era for women's lib and civil rights and so forth. And so it really kind of gave me a different perspective. So sports offered to young girls at that time, organized sports, was swimming and track and field. And so when I read this book on Babe Didrikson, I thought, well, I'm going to do track and field and be an Olympian in that. And basketball was kind of a side thing. But I played 7 sports in high school. And so I didn't know that I'd get a scholarship to UCLA in 1975. 1972 is when they had the Title IX pass. So none of us knew what Title IX was or what it meant, and the opportunities that it would create for women and girls in sports. I mean, it is become the calling card for sports for women and girls. And so from there, 1976, even though I was playing other sports, basketball kind of took over with the scholarship. And then knowing that 76 was going to be the first year they had women's basketball in the Olympics. And so, I just kind of gravitated more and more to basketball, even though I played 4 sports at UCLA also. And, but I just love competing. I love to be competitive. I played a little tennis, not as good as Andrea. But I loved the game because it was an individual sport in the sense that you had to go out there, and yes, you had coaches and you had teammates and so forth that were playing on other courts, but you had to go out there and perform. You didn't have others to rely on what you're going to do. But sports has been very good to me. It's shown me around the world. It has introduced me to people that I never would have met, whether it's be in politics or entertainment or other sports athletes. And so I'm very grateful for being able to pursue a game that I still love and work in with broadcasting. So it was never my intention to be a broadcaster. It was never my intention to continue to play basketball, but so grateful that I have.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, next one. What would you say are the most rewarding parts of your life right now?
Well, my children and my middle son, Darren, and his wife, Sam, just had a little girl in December. So I'm a grandmother now.
Oh, and, congratulations.
Just watching them grow and being a part of their lives. I still, like I said, enjoy the game. I enjoy the broadcasting, both on the men's side and the women's side. And I just love being around the people that are a part of sports, and meeting Andrea coming into my life, and other women athletes, because I know how hard they have worked in different generations. And again, it's so different today with the young athletes today because of social media, which we didn't grow up on. And there was a word called brand. Athletes brand themselves today. And it's about social media and how many hits you can have. And in the college game, the nil, and even in high school, you can get paid. If you're a top quarterback in the country, you can get paid $6 million, even in high school. So the sense of being a professional athlete is so different than it was when we were competing. And so I've just been grateful for the time that I grew up and being a part of where I am. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier to Andrea, all those things that happened in my life with the superstars and the Olympics and being at UCLA and the WBL and the Pacers and so forth. Those are all highlights of, quote, my career, and a lot of different Hall of Fames that I've been in and so forth. But it's the people. It's the people that I've met and the relationships that I've continued to keep throughout my life.
Now, this is an interesting introduction to the question that I have, because both you and I, obviously being professional athletes, we have a love for being a professional athlete, but we also have a love for being a fan. I mean, that's part of it. We've also been Olympians. So let's take a deep dive on the difficulties of all those. Let's go with fans first, because fans help make sports. I mean, that's really, what is very special about sports as well. It's hard for families to be able to go. It's expensive these days. It's just a different thing. And in the old days, they'd be able to get out there for a couple dollars, and it's not a couple dollars anymore. So what kind of love do you have for the fans out there?
Well, maybe that's why the high schools are drawing so well, because you can go to a high school game and they're just as much fun. I don't care what the sport is. And, but yes, it's expensive to take a family of 4 to a baseball game. I know when the Dodgers, when the O'Malley family owned it, all those upper deck seats were always $5. And my daughter Drew had interviewed Peter O'Malley one time and said, why did you and your dad keep those seats at $5? He said, because we didn't need the money. And he wanted families to come. Mm-hmm. Well, now it's so difficult with, the salaries that players are getting, but, the TV contracts that help pay for the salaries. And now betting is legal, which was not before. Betting is huge in how it dictates things, and social media as far as Instagram and TikTok and so forth. And and how much you can be on Twitter. And that's where you get your branding. And that's where people really get to see the games. And now you can stay at home and have a 80-inch TV and invite family and friends over and have your own food. And it's not going to cost you to host 20 people to watch a game at your house, rather than having to deal with parking, which is probably $45 to $100, and getting a program and dealing with the crowd and 100,000 people at a Super Bowl and so forth. So things have changed as far as how you watch a game. And also because of, Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and so forth, a lot of people don't watch regular TV because they don't want to watch commercials. And yes, you have the Super Bowl with the commercials. People want to watch them, but a lot of people are clicking them off because then they'll go to their social media and know that they can watch it there later. So it's totally changed. It's unfortunate because you love to see the kids continue to go. And I know in the WNBA, especially with the Phoenix Mercury, and I'm sure it is with all the teams, that there is a sense of we want to continue to bring families in. We want women and men and from all walks of life to be able to come and enjoy the women's game, because they are unbelievably talented women. And we want to keep our ticket prices so that they can continue to come. And also we have, I know after games, we'll have an autograph session. We'll take 2 players off and they go off and they autograph for season ticket holders or different kids that come in and just that, again, relationship to get to meet the WNBA players kind of one-on-one.
Mm-hmm. So Adriana and I have had obviously a professional sports history with tennis. Olympics are different. They fight, they train from such a very young age, and they only get it every 4 years. Whereas in basketball, you have games consistently, you have, the finals, and in tennis, you have 4 Grand Slams. So what kind of advice do you have for someone that's a young Olympian that's like, do I do this or do I go into computers, or is sports worth it anymore? I mean, what do you tell a young kid who's deciding what to do?
No, what is worth it? What's your definition of success? Mm-hmm. Coach Wooden said, success is peace of mind in knowing that you did your best to be the best that you're capable of becoming. It has nothing to do with finances or the dollar. And I think that that's what I try and tell kids when I go out and speak, and even to parents. The bottom line is sports is supposed to be fun. They're supposed to enjoy it. You're supposed to teach them the fundamentals. It's not about winning and losing. And yet our society with coaches, whether they're AAU coaches, whether they're junior high or high school coaches, college coaches, if they don't win, their job is precedent, it is determined as far as if your teams win or lose, if you have a job or not. Professionally, collegiately, high school wise. And so that's what's unfortunate, is that we base everything on winning and losing. And we know that you're going to win and lose. I mean, that's just part of sports. But your success is your peace of mind in knowing that you did your best. And when you go out there, and you've said it, Andrea, in your talks and so forth, that you play for God. You play your best for God. And sometimes your best that day is the best you can do. It's not the best that you're capable of, in the sense of what you've been able to achieve in the past, but it's the best that you have that day. And that's all you can ask for. Sometimes you're going to lose. Sometimes somebody's going to be better. Sometimes somebody's going to hit a lucky shot. And I think with young kids, I continue to try and say, you've got to have fun. But that's hard to tell these AAU coaches to have fun, because they're out there to win. And unfortunately, you want all your kids to play. If you've got a soccer team, or if you've got a water polo team, you want all your kids to play so they can experience having the opportunity to go out and see what it's like to run or to swim or to compete against somebody and be physical and so forth. And or to hit the racket if it's golf or tennis or whatever the individual sport is too, badminton, and to be able to give them the opportunity to have fun. And if they lose, you love to see their competitiveness. If they win, you love to see their competitiveness. Mm-hmm. But, most sports are team sports. And so you want to share that joy with somebody. And so you're always jumping up into your teammates' arms, or your schoolmates, or your parents or grandparents, or whoever is there to watch. And so with sports, it's kind of tricky in the sense of, where do you go? What's your best? How do you teach a kid? Is it about getting a scholarship? or is playing sports going to lead to that scholarship? You're playing sports because you love it and you get better at it and you're good at it, and then people are going to see you. But today, again, it's very difficult with social media because they're putting games on by the time they're 3 years old that they can dribble the ball. And so they're out there in the public eye. And a lot of people say that's the Kardashian look, the Kardashians and how they've promoted themselves and how their children are out there in front of the camera. And so kids see that. Kids are on the social media, and how many hits can I get? Is that their success? Is that what they look at? And for me, I don't have a clue who follows me. I know that I make mistakes all the time. I'll say somebody's name wrong, or I get a statistic wrong and so forth. I don't mean to do it, but I make mistakes. And so the social media gets on me and they're negative about me. And then when I have my children read it, Mom, did you hear what they said about you? I said, I don't know these people. I don't, and yet those people can probably dictate whether I have a job or not. Mm-hmm. And I try and tell kids, I said, when they say, well, I've got so many, people that I'm friends with on Facebook. I said, could you call 10 of those friends on Facebook up and say, if you were stuck, your car was stuck at 3:00 in the morning and they'd come pick you up? Mm-hmm. Are those friends? You don't know who these people are.
Very good point. Mm-hmm. Okay, before we transition to the rest of the group to ask their next question, I want to finish up with the professional athlete side. We had a really interesting talk the other day about, and I want you to briefly go through that, about longevity, the importance of athletes when you're going after a sport and you have a career potential in professional sports, to remember this, that Ann's going to share with you. Get your education, get your other career, do whatever, because listen to what Ann's going to say right now. Go ahead, Ann, about the longevity.
The one thing, again, the education has changed so much from when we were growing up about getting a college education. And still, I think a college education is important, but it's about how do you deal with your finances. You would love in high school and college that finance would be taught, and how to deal with money, how to rent a car or buy a car or save for gas, or if you rent an apartment and so forth. And Corey, having a family, how much it costs to raise a family. Diapers and bottles and clothes and shoes and how it all changes. And so when you're an athlete, if you're fortunate enough to get a scholarship, or not even a scholarship, but if you get an opportunity to continue playing in college sports, no matter what the sport is, at a small university, at a Division II school, an NAIA school, a junior college, you want to find something that you love to do. And sometimes in college, you don't know what you want to do and study. And we know that the tech world is big and it makes a lot of money and a lot of people are going into that. But in saying that, you as an athlete, from the time you start playing at 5 years old or 10 years old, you've only got another 10 years of playing if you're lucky. And maybe you can play another 10 years after that if you're very, very lucky. So now you're 30 years old and out of the game. What do you do? Because you're going to live another 50 years, mm-hmm. and you have to do something. And so I think that a lot of athletes, and especially parents today too, lose sight of having a life outside of sports. And it's great that if a kid wants to compete and wants to go to these tournaments and so forth, that's great. But you know what? Go on a family vacation. Easter, there's a tournament going on. No, go, your parents are going to go to a family reunion or whatever. Or no, we're going to the movies this night. We're not going to go play a game and, sit and fly up to Vegas or whatever. Kids travel so much with these things too, and they get burned out. Kids mm-hmm. are getting burned out because by the time they're playing at such a young age and they get to high school, they've done studies that young girls at the age of 14 are dropping out of sports because they are burned out. And boys may go a little longer because there's more opportunities for boys. But I will tell you that it ends. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a major injury, whether something drastic happens in your family, that a loved one passes away and that you have to go home and help out and support, the family, or you get tired, or the coach is there, they don't play you, and you sit the bench your whole 4 years in college, and then that's it. So what do you do? And I think that that's the hard part, the hard transition, because by the time these kids today with social media, they've had a camera in their face. They've been told how good they are. They're patted on the back. Everybody gets a medal. And then all of a sudden it stops. And mentally, it's very difficult to deal with.
And if you could just mention, what is the average for the WNBA, but more so for the NBA? Because most people think, oh, they see LeBron James and he's out there forever. In their mind, he's there forever. Right. What is the average career? Yeah.
He's 38 years old. He's a young man. And he wants to play probably another 3 or 4 years. He wants to play with his son. Wow. But at 40 years old, the thing is, there's so much money too, that a lot of the athletes, they do have money. So for example, if you were going to get $1 million, sign $1 million contract. Well, first of all, the government is going to take almost 50% of that. Then your agent takes 10%, or let's say even 5%. Then you want to buy a house for your parents. Then you want to buy a car. No, you want to buy 2 cars. I want to buy some jewelry. Oh, shoot, I do have kids. I got to get some insurance. You're in the hole. You're in the hole. You are paying the government now. And so I don't think people really understand how much this money lasts. And they say people that come out of the NFL, usually the NFL, it's about a 2.5 to 3 year stint in the NFL for most players. You're not a Tom Brady. You're not an Aaron Rodgers. You're not, and those guys are making ridiculous amount of monies in their contracts. Most of the quarterbacks make the money. I think Aaron Rodgers was the highest paid player in the NFL this year, making $50 million a year. And but he's in his 30s and he'll be out of the game soon. But hopefully these people are able to invest their money and so forth. But, people get taken too. But in saying that, the NFL is about 3 years average. NBA is about 4 to 5 years average in the NBA. In the Major League Baseball, it's about 6 years, 6 to 7 years average. So you're talking about kids that are still trying to make it out of college, and at 25, 26, 27 years old, they're out of the game. And they don't have the salaries that the top guys make. In the WNBA, when it started in 1997, the highest salary was $50,000. Today, what is it? It's 2000 or 1997, and now we're at 2023, and the high salary is $250,000, and that's a 4-month season. A lot of the women go overseas and play. So in the WNBA, when it first started, most of the salaries, that was high, $50,000, but they started at $15,000. When I signed in the WBL, the average salaries were between $7,000 and $15,000.
Oh my goodness.
I was making more because I had signed my contract with the NBA and the Indiana Pacers. So I was making $45,000, but they didn't pay all that money. That's a whole nother story.
Mm-hmm.
But in saying that, the salaries in the NBA, when it first started back in the late 40s, early 50s, those salaries were $5,000 to $7,000. Now, the average salary is $1 million. The average salary, the lowest paid player in the NBA is just over $600,000, what the men make. And tennis, certainly I know that a lot of women in the early days back in the 70s and so forth fought to get equal pay in the tournaments. Well, we know it's still not equal pay. They'll say it is, and then they come back, well, the women only play 3 sets, the men play 5 sets, this and that. They try and always jack something up. And but in professional sports, the men are getting paid. So even in business, Title IX was not a sports law. It was a law to have women get equal pay in education as educators. So women today, how many years later, 51 years yet later from Title IX, women make 82 cents to the dollar that a man does in corporate America. And a minority woman makes 64 cents. So it's very difficult when you continue to work as hard as you can. But I will say, since Title IX in sports, that we have found that most women in corporate America that are in head positions, top positions, 80% of those women have been athletes because they have faced adversity. They know how to fail. They know how to lose. They know how to, figure things out. So we're seeing that in more corporations, no matter what the business is, that they're looking for women that have been competitive.
Good point. Mm-hmm. All right, team. Who's up next with their question?
I think it's my turn. All right. Well, great answer so far, Ann. We love having you.
Thanks, Corey.
All right, so you've accomplished a lot over your career, and you're still moving mountains to this day by playing an active role not only in the WNBA but also in the NBA. Do you feel like now that we're in 2023 that that we are finally being treating female athletes equal to male athletes? You kind of hinted on it earlier, but probably not, right?
No, you're right.
You just spoke to it, so you took my question. I'm sorry.
It's a good question though, but you're right. And thank you for bringing it up. And certainly, I mean, look at the WNBA, and we know about certain players, but again, a lot of that is social media. Diana Taurasi is still one of the great players of this game. And unless the Phoenix Mercury are not promoting her, because the WNBA is not, and she's not a social media person. Mm-hmm. So since she's not on social media, where somebody like Candace Parker and Chiney Ogwumike are on social media, Breanna Stewart is on social media, Skylar Diggins-Smith on social media. So you know more about the athletes when they're on social media. And certainly women, we're in a situation too with the NIL. And I think the LSU gymnast, she made a lot of money. And I think Tara Vanderveer, who's a basketball coach at Stanford and highly respected Olympic coach and won national titles at Stanford. And she has said what's unfortunate with the women on the NIL, it's you still have to look a certain way. There's a sexism about the female athlete compared to the male athlete.
Yes.
And I remember seeing a Sports Illustrated years ago when Tiger was probably in his 30s. And Annika Sorenstam was playing still. And the pictures that they had of Annika Sorenstam was in a sports bra and bike pants, which is fine. I mean, it's great, right? And but they didn't have that for Tiger. Why wasn't Tiger in bike pants? And so there's still kind of a sexism about women and how you sell them and how you look. Unfortunately, I mean, you see these women today that are playing. I mean, they've got the long eyelashes that I could have never played with.
Some of them have makeup. I could never play in makeup.
A lot of them have makeup, and their hair is a certain way and so forth. And they're very conscious about how they look on the court. And I applaud them to that. I was never into that, never could do that. And I will say in junior high, I was wearing mascara. But then I get so sweaty and wipe it off, and I'm like, oh, what am I doing? And I have black stuff all over my face, But it's a different idea for women athletes today on how they look. They're very conscious of it.
Thank you.
So, and yes, you're covering so many areas. So you're almost answering all my questions, but I do want to come back to this one. Since we are talking about this, and this is from a personal experience, I played in college and then growing up tennis. And I've noticed I was not really one of those girls that braided their hair and wore skirts and I didn't get that much attention. Didn't matter how much talent I had, but I love the sport, of course. And then I wanted to ask, so what kind of advice would you give young female athletes competing in male dominating sports? And what do you think it takes to be one of the best?
Well, Adriana, you said that, and the first person that came to my mind was Annika Sorenstam, or not Annika, Kournikova.
Anna. Oh my goodness.
Kournikova.
Oh.
But and look at how much money she made.
More than
some of the top athletes. And Serena. Serena, you didn't talk about Serena's game all the time. The media was talking about what outfit she was going to wear.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Venus. In Venus, they started designing their own clothes and so forth, which was great. They took advantage of it. I think that when women can take the power out of the hands of people trying to take advantage of them, I think that's smart. And I know in sports today, it's not just the quote salary of playing that sport. It's your sponsors, it's your endorsements, it's your, again, the social media and so forth. And, what shoe are you wearing? What outfit are you wearing and so forth, and kind of the backing. But we've also seen too in track and field that Felix, I can't think of her name, but when she got pregnant, Nike backed out. Mm-hmm. When women get
track
pregnant,
and field.
it's like, you're a little heavy, you might have to lose weight kind of thing. And so there's still this image of women athletes. And it's frustrating at times. And as much as Corey has asked a great question, as much as we've gone forward, there's still this, stuck in a certain aspect of how young girls look at themselves.
So would you recommend for the girls to keep their essence and remember that they're athletes and try to pursue it that way, or be more like Serena and Venus and take advantage and make a ton of money, or like Anna?
Look at their parents. Their parents understood when they were athletes. They understood their background. And I don't think you have a lot of parents, they just see the money, and I think a lot of young kids, both girls and boys, get caught up and, they work hard and they go out there and get better in their skill. But are they having fun still? I think the Williams sisters, I think that they had fun. Yes, he was a taskmaster. There's no question.
Yeah.
But I think having parents understand too what they're putting their daughters through. Softball was a sport probably 50 years ago, even 30 years ago, 20 years ago, that the image of a softball athlete was not a positive image. And but now all the girls are wearing ponytails. They've got the helmets where you can put the ponytail through the hole and so forth. And, there's just this different kind of approach with women's softball, which I think is fantastic. But let's go back to the 1996 Olympics. They said softball, soccer, and basketball in women's those three sports was going to change women's sports. And it has to a certain extent. They got some publicity. They were on the cover of Sports Illustrated. But then again, why are they not out there more? Whether it be the WNBA players, women tennis, or golf? Golf is tough today because you don't have a lot of Americans, a lot of Koreans and Taiwanese and Japanese. So you've got women coming over from overseas. And so our sponsors here, they don't speak English to those sponsors. And so it's a different approach on the women's LPGA than it is on the PGA as far as endorsements and so forth, because they've got money, the Asians coming over to the United States, and we don't have as many Americans, where back in the 70s and 80s, we had some really top names in the LPGA where you knew all those golfers. And the sponsors promoted them. They had fun with them when they went to those tournaments and so forth. So again, it's about relationships, and it's about these young girls understanding, not only having confidence in themselves, because as much as sports has given confidence to a lot of girls and women, they're still very insecure. I see a lot of young girls that just are not confident, and yet they're playing sports, and you're thinking, well, they're going out there and doing something strong. But then, some boy in high school or junior high will make a comment to them, and they go into this shell. So as much as sports gives you confidence, there's still young girls and young women still trying to find their voice.
So keep your true essence and confidence, and respecting who you
have
are.
People in your life that are positive.
Okay. Thank you.
Here's an interesting Anna Kournikova story. She was injured and couldn't play the US Open. And we had a special dinner event. People were actually going to pay to meet her, and they were donating that to the foundation. And Anna still showed up, which is really impressive. Right. She flew in from Florida to New York, still attended the event, even though she was injured. So it's, there's a different thing. European players and American players, a lot of European players, and Adriana, maybe after you can talk to this, if we have enough time after Rebecca and Karen ask their final question. But a lot of the European players, they don't go through like what's traditional high school here. They leave their sport early and play. Whereas in our country, a lot of times I finished playing in my high school and played high school tennis. But when I was injured at the French Open, and I was 2 in the world, 16. So I was probably 18 or 19 at the time. And I walked off the court and I had an injury, and a famous reporter walked up to me and said, "You will never amount to anything ever again in your life if you don't continue playing tennis."
Oh my
and so when you talk about things that happen to athletes and what people expect and all that, but that's for another podcast, or maybe podcast.
But,
ever.
You look at Martina. Martina had to escape her country at that time. And how there's
a lot of struggles out there.
How awful they were to her because of how she was built and the things they said about her, or what they say about Brittany Griner and how she looks. These women are not, they were born this way. It's not their fault that the U.S. media thinks that they look like a guy, or that's how they were born. And to to know that over in Europe, you're absolutely right. And no matter what the sport is completely different than in this country as far as going to school.
Are there any goals you made long ago you still are trying to achieve?
You know, people ask me that question. I know we're supposed to be goal-oriented, and I'm sure that I have been. Like I said, the Olympics were a goal of mine. And but every time I stepped on the court or stepped on the track or the field, the goal was to be the best and do my best. And the same thing with broadcasting. The same thing when I go out and give a speech. I want to do my best. That's my goal. You know what? The good Lord has been good to me, honestly. And you know, I haven't planned a lot of these things that have happened for me. The door has been opened up, and I've made the choice to do it, whether people agreed with it or not. And I've just been very fortunate. I just want to work hard. I want to do the best that I can. And having a team around me, my play-by-play guy and the producers, the directors, the camera people, that's a team. And we all have to work together. But setting goals, I want to be a good mom. I want to continue to be a good mom and be there for my children and give them guidance when I can. And but I just want to continue to give back as much as I can. I don't know if that's a goal or not, but you know, just living life to the best of my ability to make a difference in somebody else's life.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, here's one. So when you have a day that's just Anne, and your goal for that day is to relax, recharge the batteries, recalibrate, what do you do, and how do you think, like, what can you share that may be helpful for others?
Well, my life has changed as I have gotten older, and I used to love to go play tennis a lot, and I played a lot of golf. Don played golf, so he and I played a lot of golf, and we taught our kids how to play golf and play a lot of different sports. But you know, being a mom, you're so entrenched, and especially when they're young and what they're doing, and you get caught up. I mean, I think with a lot of parents, especially today when their kids are playing soccer or baseball or whatever the sport is, by the time they're 5, 6, 7 years old, you can't get to their games enough. You want to see them play. You just want to be supportive for them. And then when it all ends after high school or college, you're like, oh, now what do I do? You go through withdrawals. And so that's why being a part of the game for me is still the enjoyment of being a fan. As Andrea said, you know, I am a fan even when I'm broadcasting, to be able to go to a game, and that's my profession. But I still love to play golf. I like to read and watch movies and spend time with my family. I have brothers and sisters that are still alive, and they have children and grandchildren. And so I go to their games and try to be supportive for them. And, you know, it's just all about family for me.
Great question. Awesome. Great question. All of these are really great questions and answers. So I'm going to finish this up with some, you probably know David Stern. David Stern, the former NBA commissioner. He was a dear friend of mine, and I went to his memorial, and a lot of the legends were there. They had great respect for him, and he brought the NBA global in many aspects. And I know audience members are like, wait a minute, you have Ann Meyers Drysdale on and you haven't brought up KD? Come on already. What's going on? So with David, he always was aware of like your marquee players, you know, what they did for fans and audiences. So obviously the trade just happened with Kevin Durant, and you just re-signed Brittany. So what are you looking forward to? I mean, this is an exciting time for the Phoenix Suns and Phoenix Mercury and basketball fans. And in this sense, basketball has kind of gone on the front pages too, not just the sports pages, but the front pages. So what are you looking forward to coming up here?
Well, I will say that, you know, the NBA and the WNBA have really taken up social media, and with Black Lives Matter, and they have a social voice. I haven't heard as much from Major League Baseball or the NFL, which, you know, you look at Colin Kaepernick, who was really kind of started things off, and with him kneeling for the national anthem. But in saying that, you know, for me, it's obviously winning a championship, you know, for both teams. But with Kevin Durant coming in, and Andrea, you and I talked about this. If you look at the 60s and 70s, again, ESPN didn't exist. you were lucky you got to see one game a week on TV. Usually it was black and white for me. And then you'd go out and practice to be Jerry West or Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain or John Havlicek or whatever. And, not until Bird and Magic came into the NBA did things start to change. I mean, because ESPN was around, but those games were tape delayed, those championships. They were best out of 5, not best out of 7. And, but most of the games in the NBA, they were talked about, it's the Celtics against the Sixers, the Lakers against the Knicks. But now it's KD against LeBron. It's Steph Curry against Kyrie Irving or Luka and so forth. So it's very much star oriented. And even in the NFL, it's always the quarterbacks or the wide receivers. And certainly in Major League Baseball, it's going to who's going to hit the home runs and the big guy as far as your pitcher. And so it's become very star oriented as far as selling the product. And, in the NBA, so Kevin Durant, who's really been one of the best players to ever play this game, and hopefully he stays healthy. And it certainly makes our team a lot stronger in the sense of Devin Booker, who's one of the rising stars in this league, was an all-star last year and all first team, all NBA, and Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, a number 1 pick. So we have a lot of high hopes. I mean, as far as advancing far into the playoffs, if not to the finals. And then on the other end, you got the Phoenix Mercury with Brittany Griner signing back again. And I thought Vanessa Nygaard in her first year last year did a tremendous job. I personally felt that she was coach of the year. Becky Hammond did a great job in Vegas, but they were stacked. I mean, they had everybody back. And Brittany Griner was out in prison in Russia. Tina Charles left our team. Skylar Diggins-Smith, without her, we would not have been in the playoffs, but she ended up not playing the last part of the season. We had several other players that didn't want to play or were frustrated. We had Diana Taurasi get hurt at the end of the season, along with Sophie Cunningham most of the season. Shea Petty, we lost her. And we still made the playoffs. And so I thought Vanessa Nygaard really did a tremendous job. And with Brittany Griner, though, being in jail for 10 months in Russia, and then to come back and say, I want to play. And I saw her today. I was over at the practice facility, and she was working her tail off along with Breanna Stewart, or with not Breanna Stewart, Turner, Breezy Turner. And, they were really working hard. And so in watching that, I marvel, honestly, at her mental capacity, where she is, and her physical capacity to be able to want to come back. And she and her wife, Sherelle, have done such an amazing job as far as bringing to light prisoners overseas. I mean, they have made that their cause. And without Brittany Griner being a political prisoner in Russia, Paul Whelan and the other prisoners throughout the world don't get the attention because of who Brittany is. And hopefully one day he can get out. But I know a lot of people are still writing letters for him. And Brittany and Sherelle are very much in the forefront of that. And Brittany Griner, I'm just in awe of her, and looking forward to having Diana Taurasi back at 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
This is not your average interview group. You usually have people that are, from sports, have that history. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have 3 childhood cancer survivors. They're each in different fields, helping the world, society, and humanity. You have 2 professional athletes out here. So what do you feel? I mean, I feel like we're all humanitarians, all of us, in the whole podcast. What question would you have for us, just because it's exciting for everybody to have one from you?
I would say to all of you, who has been the biggest impact of all of you when you were a child and where you are today? And how did that happen for you? And who was your mentor there?
That's a tough one. I was on my own most of the time.
And how did you get to the United States?
On my own, to college. I didn't speak much English, but I got to go to college. Eventually, I passed all the exams, and South Alabama University Division I. I ended up playing tennis there. When you are a professional athlete, I think it can be very strenuous. So I can't really say that now, but yes, it was challenging.
And one of her, she's a humble, it's interesting because she is very driven and very talented, and I think when you have a professional athlete and they're very talented and they're very driven, there's a good stubbornness to that too. But I think that was a
comes
value
with the
to
culture
her.
a little bit. Yes.
And she actually, a lot of young Europeans learn English at home. She actually had to learn it at college and then graduated with 2 degrees learning English.
Did you
college.
watch cartoons? How did you learn English?
I was very diligent, like just English and TV.
What was your favorite show?
Friends.
She still watches it.
I love it.
Oh my
Karen,
gosh.
you're up. Go, Karen.
Well, I guess I have to say my mom. My mom has always been my number one supporter and role model. She's a pillar to the house, and she's amazing. She's very strong too.
That's great.
Her mom has an inner strength like Karen. Karen has she's been an ambassador for us on so many programs, and everybody has a different personality, like teammates. And there'll be the shyest child who just is in a shell. And even if it were a Disneyland, okay, and there's all these amusement park things, and the child is just so shy, and Karen will be the ambassador on that program, and that child is talking away and completely changed, completely different personality just from spending time with Karen. I mean, she has a very unique gift it's like a light. I mean, each of them have this light that just soars out to the world. That is so cool.
Making them feel comfortable. Yeah.
Okay, Corey.
All right. My biggest person growing up was probably my parents, both my parents. Being the youngest of 6 kids, and then having suffered through cancer. I was the baby of the family, and they still remind me of that all the time. So I'm still the baby, even though I'm 36. But my parents, so like I said, being the youngest of 6 kids and just being able to help me through my diagnosis. I was diagnosed in 4th grade, lost my leg, in 8th grade. To be able to be with me at the hospital all the time, but yet still find time for the other 5 siblings was just incredible. And now being a parent myself, I cannot imagine having 6 kids and taking care of, a child who is sick with cancer. So my parents were my rock, and I lived for them, and they helped me through everything. And I'm still very close to my parents. So I appreciate that. And yeah.
Do you remember at 10 years old when you found out the news? What did you understand?
Yeah. So thanks for asking me. So, I was playing baseball at the time. I was a very active boy. I was playing soccer and baseball. I was actually on 2 baseball teams, and they thought it was tendonitis. They were pretty convinced it was tendonitis, and I had complained for about 6 weeks or so. And I went to the doctors. My mom and dad took me, and they did an X-ray, and they did an X-ray because it was lasted longer than 6 weeks, and there was about a softball sized tumor, but it was almost contained the bone, so it didn't show that much. The doctor, Dr. Azar at the time, he's since passed away, but he was shocked. He was devastated. He was a family doctor. And I didn't know, I mean, I knew a little bit, but just seeing my parents just crushed, just devastated. And then things happen so quickly, as all of us know, being cancer survivors, they get the ball rolling really quickly, especially being so young. So within a matter of 3 months or so, they had already taken the femur out, replaced it with the metal prosthesis. Wow. And since I was a little small guy in 4th grade, they tried to keep the limb salvaging, keep the leg, keep up with the growth, things like that. But with infection and the prosthesis getting loose, things like that, finally in 8th grade, the leg was pretty much garbage. So the best thing was to amputate it. But then the silver lining of that was meeting Andrea, and that was amazing, because if it wasn't for something like that, I would never meet, I would never met Andrea. It was because of my amputation that I met Andrea. So.
How were your siblings? How did your siblings respond?
It was tough. I think the one who had the hardest was the one right above me, Joel. It went boy, girl, and then went boy, boy. I kind of broke the order of that. I was supposed to be a girl and whatever. So, it was tough. My mom stayed with me all the time, every night in the hospital. I pretty much lived there for years. And my dad would leave GM and then come see me at the hospital from let's say 5 to 8 and then go back home. And they were all very big into sports, and my parents didn't miss a lot of things. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it was really tough on them. They don't talk about it too much, probably because they don't want to make me feel bad, but I'm sure it was very tough on them.
Well, they're still there for you, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. We're still a close family, thankfully. So
when Corey first came out, we had a ropes course, and there's a mountain you had to climb. And he looked at it and he goes, okay, well, so I don't have to do this. I don't have a leg. And I said, yeah, you have to do this even with one leg. And he's like, no. See, I don't have to do this because I only have one leg. And so we went back and forth and back and forth. And so everybody was just looking at, everyone started cheering his name, like Corey. So he's like, okay. So he gets all the way up there and he looks and he's like, well, how do I get down? I'm like, well, with one leg. And he got down, and it was like, it was such a cool thing. But anyway,
it was a great experience.
That's awesome.
All right, Rebecca.
Okay, my turn. So I have a couple answers to that question. I would say definitely my parents, because I think being so young, I was diagnosed when I was 12. Being so young, you're right. I mean, your parents are right there with you. I think if you talk to my parents, they'll tell you that I was kind of more of their strength than I would always be like, okay, it's fine, Mom. It's fine. It's going to be fine, Dad. Everything's going to be fine. And I think part of that also is because definitely having cancer at such a young age, the entire spectrum of the seriousness of where everything was at. I think that was a huge advantage for me, but definitely my parents just being there. I knew that I was going to be okay. And we just confident, they helped me stay confident in that. And I think I helped them as well. And then the other part of my question would have to be my friends that I've met that are survivors through Andrea's organization. And then there's another nonprofit pediatric cancer organization that I was a part of right before I met Andrea. But as much support as you receive through family and friends, it's just when you go to, when we would go to event camps for Little Star Foundation, and then the other organization that I was with, it's hard to articulate. There's no comparison in the relationships that you meet or the relationships that you establish through your survivor network. And I can honestly say, if I were to go back and got to choose, I would probably choose to have cancer again, just to meet the people that I have and establish the lifelong relationships that I have. And just all of those people have also kind of helped me become who I am today and get through so much.
Well, like you said, the network. It's a network mm-hmm. of big arms around you.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. Strange tennis story. I was practicing against the wall that one time because I was going to play the Wimbledon Legends, and I went there and I needed someone to practice with. And so I said to Adriana, are you free? And she goes, no, I have a job. I can't leave. And I go, it's Wimbledon. It's like, you don't want to. And she goes, I can't leave. My boss won't let me leave. And I go, we're going to be helping kids with cancer and blind kids and deaf kids and kids that are in wheelchairs. And she goes, I have a job. And they wouldn't let her take that time off to go help these kids. Yeah. So she quit. I'm not kidding you. Her boss would not let her leave. I'm like, look, we have like
it was a volunteer position too at the time.
it wasn't a paid position.
I'd be down forever.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I feel responsible here now forever. So we went, and one of the first, it was incredible because she was teaching art to kids that were blind. Okay. Like that's not a field I knew how to do. But there was this one child, and I know everyone has to go, but I have to share the story because it's so amazing. So there's this little girl in a wheelchair. And so it's our first program. It's like, I don't play my match till the next day. And so Adriana's like, so what are we doing? I go, well, we're going to go play tennis with these kids and And she goes, okay, how? There's no tennis courts there. I go, we're going to make the tennis court. We're going to just create the whole thing. Like, just go with your creativity, imagination. She's like, okay. So none of the kids had come out at all. We had 0 kids because they were all in wheelchairs and none of them thought they could do anything. So finally one came out and started laughing so loud and having so much fun. Actually got the caregiver there said, well, she can't get out of her wheelchair. This is like, she's in her wheelchair. That's it.
IVs hooked into her too. I remember.
Yeah. I mean, it was like the whole thing. And we're like, that's okay. Let's just give it a try. Not only did she get out of her wheelchair, she was swinging a tennis racket. She was and it was the coolest thing. She was leaning on, because she couldn't really walk, but she was leaning on Adriana and swinging, and this smile on her face. Her mom came up to us later with tears in her eyes and said, I haven't seen her smile. I haven't seen her laugh. I haven't seen her do anything that was fun. And after that, Adriana, because we had like bowling pins and hats, we were like dressed up in like carnival things. They had no idea we were like going to Wimbledon the next day. They just knew we cared. And all these kids, so they heard this laughter. And the next thing, remember this, Adriana, the whole pathway filled with wheelchairs, with all these people pushing kids with wheelchairs that came around. And we were there the whole day. And Adriana looked at me, she goes, I would have quit that job forever for just this one moment, if you can still let me keep helping. And it was one of those things where so often you have no idea if you're ever going to make a difference. And I said the same thing to Adriana about her unique history. And to know, Anne, you've called me and emailed me like every other day, how excited you were to be here. And I shared that with them all. And I will tell you that it's something we will remember forever.
I'll be listening to this and writing down notes. It's so much wisdom.
Seriously, what you shared,
yes,
not just a decade, but women's sports in general, which affected men's sports in general. But it's how I introduced you. It's like you're a legend in life and in sports, and with the grace and courage too, that you've blazed trails, and you're not really concerned if everybody remembers that or knows that. But if someone cares to know about it, it's like, it's with the passion as if you've lived it just that moment, that we can all carry on a legacy that you've given to us, to like a priceless moment to go, okay, let's teach this to others. Let's let others know about Anne. And so I thank you for that.
That's all we have is moments, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you for this experience. It's just, it is.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to meet everybody.
Yes.
Nice to meet you too.
So nice to meet you. And thank you so much for your time. This was amazing.
Well, thank you. And I hope this is not the last time I get to see you guys. Hopefully.
Likewise.
Maybe we'll get an invitation to visit you at a game or something, and you'll hear us out cheering.
We'll work it out.
We'll be going,
make a sign.
You got it.
Yeah, we'll make a sign. Go Anne.
Go Anne. Your biggest fan.
Yeah. Her biggest fans right here. So
we came to see her, not Kevin Durant.
I'll come see you.
Oh my. Well, thank you again. This has just been special, this experience together. And hopefully our audience feels the same way, that they have something that forever they can hold dear and carry them through on days when they may not want to get up, or when they're springing up out of their bed and just like excited for it. There's something for everyone. So thanks again.
Not interfere with what you can.
All right. Thank you again so much. And blessings to you for all that you do.
God bless everybody.